Hey everybody, Justin Worden, and you're watching What's New in Electronics. We are here on the floor of IPC APEX 2025 in Anaheim, California with another expert panel. We have two experts sitting right here to my side, and we're going to get into it a little bit. You guys ready?
Ready.
All right. So once we go, we'll ask you the first question. Please introduce yourself, your company, and then we'll move on from there and see if we can do this in a friendly manner.
Absolutely. Thanks, Justin.
All right. So first question, what key differentiators that set EMS providers apart in the aerospace, defense, and medical markets? Why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Ed Evangelista. My company is Federal Electronics. So I think the key differentiators to start with, there's a lot of regulatory requirements that you've got to comply with. If you don't have that, you probably don't get considered. Beyond that, we find that within those three verticals, there's a lot of commonality. Regulations aside, they tend to be lower volume. They tend to be higher mix, many part numbers, highly complex, highly engineered. In general, we find that it's a high touch account from the perspective of administration. And so systems have to be designed so that it will be responsive in those environments. I think those are really the criteria that differentiates EMS as opposed to other type of EMS companies which either do much larger volume or much smaller volume and don't have the resources and the overhead to give them the support they need.
And I'm Michael Hinshaw with Green Circuits, and I agree with that. I think one of the things that we see is the level of certification required, particularly to serve an aerospace or a defense company, goes beyond ITAR, 9100D, requirements for the NASA J standard, and then equally importantly are your systems and processes to protect data. CMMC is probably the most widely talked about right now, having security of information coming in, controlling it while it's in your facility, and making sure that what you provide and deliver meets all the confidentiality and security requirements of the government or the defensive contractors.
I'm going to go off script here, so I apologize. How many NDAs do you guys sign on a weekly basis? I'm joking, of course, but
in the hundreds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're trying to manage and grow a business in such a highly regulated vertical, I mean, what type of investments or strategies do you have to put in place to actually grow your business? Because I imagine you face some struggles with such regulations.
For us, it's really threefold. First is training. It's all about talent. And when we talk about a standard like the J standard, it's not just about having your facility certified, but we've gone out and trained 40 of our employees, both operators and quality professionals, on that program so that they can be in place as orders come in. Second is assets. The requirement for this type of work tends to be complex. They tend to have a higher barrier or a higher threshold for what needs to be tested or assembled. And then, I think third is back to your investment in your systems and processes, and that, again, IT, hard software, protection services.
And I think one of the keys for us anyways, and I agree with all of that you need that baseline and that foundation, but we go to market in a different way. When we try to bring on new customers, we go to market in a way where we pretty much know where we want to be. We know who we can do business with. So we're very cognizant of what our value is. We're very, very cognizant of who within those verticals value that. And based upon this, we have a very concerted effort. It's not a shotgun, it's a rifle shot. We know where we want to be, and we need to be able to demonstrate all of those capabilities. You need the assets, you need the manufacturing processes, you need the administrative processes, because as I said, these are high-touch customers. It can be overwhelming to try to manage depending on what your policies and protocols are. If you don't have that in place, it becomes very difficult, and that's as much a part of the identification process, who we're going to do business with, as anything else.
You said something, and I completely agree. It becomes very iterative in this industry. It's not so much getting some of these IP, building and pushing it out the door in a production environment or even in a prototyping environment. Lots of hands-on, lots of touch points with customers in this industry. That's a great comment. I agree with it.
Well, one thing I want to bring up, and I think this is a very important point, we're at a technical conference. Everything's about electronics. Everything's about regulation. Both of you, the best point I believe you made is talking about the personnel, the people. and the values that you're installing in your company and with your customers. I think we lose sight of that so much, and that's why these panels are so great, because this isn't in the script, this isn't the question, so I apologize if I'm catching you off guard. But why don't we take a moment and talk about how important it is to invest in your personnel. You can buy the best machines, but investing in your personnel is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. In our case, we will run lean during the hiring process to make sure we have somebody who fits with our culture, who fits with our mindsets on what our customer service looks like, and then we will train relentlessly on every aspect, from lean training to the specific job task, to how we work across our groups, to how we interact with our customers. And we expect our customers to be able to walk into our facility and talk to anybody from the shop floor to us, the leadership team.
You know, in many instances, our training goes beyond just the technical aspects of the job, and it becomes cultural. So, simple example, we have an expectation that if a customer reaches out to anyone, let's say via email, you've got 2 hours to respond and at least acknowledge that I've received your email and I'm working on it. Not wait a day and then get back to them. Our customers don't tolerate that. And so there's a culture that has to be created, which I'm sure you have the exact same scenario given the industry, that we've got to be thinking ahead. And in effect, we've got to become a seamless extension of our customer's operation. And if we do, that's where you know that you've created a scenario where you can succeed on their behalf.
That was like the perfect transition. It's almost like you might have saw these questions beforehand. But what type of transparency do you guys require in data sharing between your customers to really make sure you're hanging on to that relationship and giving them the support that they need? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Oh.
So data transparency is very important. This is not the type of business that, from our perspective, that's going to run on event-driven POs where you're going to have a step function. There's demand, process, and it goes away and you wait for the next one. In many instances, in the majority of our relationships with customers, we've got long-term forecasts in place. We're getting forecasts on a weekly basis. And some, I would say on average, probably monthly, but I've got several that are on a weekly basis. And we go beyond just the SKUs that are in the forecast, so we understand their platforms. So they're willing to share with us, I've got a dozen different platforms you make for me. This is the configuration of all the parts that you build as they go into the platforms. We've got customers with hundreds of parts that are active at any point in time. And so by sharing the platform configuration, by talking about from the ground up, all of these are standard, the options are here. That's a lot of information to share, but the value of that is tremendous because it allows us to be very proactive, especially, and I find this in our customer base, there can be quite a dynamic aspect to scheduling. And so when that changes, you need to have enough of that information in play so that you can respond quickly and accurately.
It's interesting you say that. In our dynamic, we do mostly R&D and early stage NPI, and so we have the same sort of touch point, but in a different environment. We have their engineers in our building, day in, day out. I bet we have 3 customers visit every single day. They have touch points with PMs, they've got touch points with operators, engineers, top to bottom staff, but it's all about that consistent iteration. And they can't give us a forecast because, by way of example, we're going to do a couple of boards today that I know are going to ship tomorrow afternoon because we do that quick turn. They're going to take them over the weekend. They're going to iterate them. By Monday, we're going to do a new set of a different iteration using the same boards. So it's the nature of what we do.
I've spent a lot of time working in sales and marketing myself, and what I've kind of found over the years is the more strict, the more regulation, the more compliance involved in an industry like medical, aerospace, and the other areas you guys work in, sometimes the harder it can be to build that rapport and like that relationship with the customer. Because in the end, you guys are providing a service, but there's a very large sales aspect, which leads to trust. How were you able to kind of overcome that black and white mentality of this strict vertical to build the relationship and partnership with the customer?
In our case, we're just very open with them. They see it. We want them to see everything. We want them to view us as an extension of their R&D program. We want the engineers, and even to the extent that I meet with their leadership in some of these companies, they view it. They can text me. They can reach out to the team. We're just like being on their team. That to me is how you take that superlative service.
Customers are not going to change for us. We have to adapt to them. So we've got certain foundational systems and processes that we use. And part of the business development role is to figure out how to engage with the customer. So we're not going to change our foundational systems for the most part, but we're going to change the way we receive data from them, and hopefully we can automate the entry into the system, and the way we present data to them. So it's the user interface that we focus on. And if we get that right, and everything is running as it should underground, it promotes that partnership. And I think customers, in spite of the fact that there is a tremendous amount of regulation and there are a lot of rules and there's a lot of compliance, customers understand that there are times when we have to make decisions on their behalf. We're not going to be non-compliant. However, we've got to be able to assimilate all of this together to be able to give them what they want. And that's part of the partnership that happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It involves trust. It involves that data sharing. But it's where a relationship will evolve. If it's truly going to be long-term, it's going to be successful.
Going back to the way I followed up your previous question, you guys brought it back to just basic human interaction, just dealing with people as people. They are customers, but the best way to make more money for your business is to help your customer make more money for theirs. And I really think you guys put a very good bow on that by bringing in, just invest in them, and transparency, a word that is not often used in this industry because everyone wants to kind of hang on to their secret sauce. Right. But what we're learning over the years, well, recently I would say, is more people are becoming more open of sharing and transparent. And you know what? You may help your competitor out a little bit, but high tides rides all boats, right? Is that the way it goes? Something like that? So anything to share on that?
Well, yeah, we were talking earlier that I think there's a common theme around how we view customers, and we know what we are, we know what we're good at. We want them to be able to understand where we can be successful and make them successful. Where we're not, we try and help them go somewhere else where they can get that. And I think that enables that kind of trust and leads to longevity in relationships.
We're not shy of telling a customer this isn't a good application for us. And we're not shy about directing them to another supplier that we may know of, that we trust, that may be able to help them. And that's that personal interaction that you get to. I think it's essential because in the long run, they can't afford for us to fail. Not with the level of service we provide, not with the engineering support, all of that. And so if we're getting into a situation, and I've had customers say, we will love you to death. Don't feel bad about saying, this is not for me, I don't have the capacity, I can't meet your timeline. And I think that's a sign of a good relationship where they're willing to accept our assessment of whether or not we can be what we need to be for them.
And I think that all comes down to how you preface that conversation when you build that first relationship, right? Some companies are so afraid to share bad news or tell a customer that they're doing it the wrong way. But if you put yourself in that expert position, you're truly there to help them. Like you said, you're going to help them in the long run. It's okay to give a customer bad news. Yeah. You don't want to do it often, but hopefully we can handle that on the front end. But I think you guys are taking a good approach by opening up the transparency and not being afraid to tell a customer that we're going to do it this way to help you, because it keeps their business around. But that's all the fun stuff. I have to hit you with the one question I hate talking about so much because I feel like it's still a hangover from 4 years ago: supply chain disruption. I mean, what are we doing?
Well, I'll give you my take on it. I think right now there's a concerted effort to onshore, nearshore, to build capability. I know that IPC, the Industry Association, is spending a lot of time in Washington. I've been there myself, trying to educate our legislative and executive branches about the importance of what we do and how much of that capability we've lost. In the environment we're in, I haven't seen, or we have not seen, real log jams in supply chain like we saw in 21 and 22. I think the market's a lot smarter, not as much hoarding as that happened during that time frame. There are always going to be issues, particularly as we see our industry in defense grow, but I also see medical and other sectors that are starting to try and buy within the Americas. So it's in a evolutionary process. I don't think we're by any means going to struggle in the near term. That's my observation.
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy answer, and every situation is different. But we see more customers who are interested, even in the MPI process, to say, can we try to get our hands around lead time? Can we try to stay away from directed source, sole source suppliers? Can we do more dual sourcing, especially on custom fabricated product? Because a lot of those suppliers, our volumes tend to be low. So the large suppliers of custom metal, machine parts, they don't really want to be involved. So we rely on smaller suppliers. And given that that's the case, if one supplier goes down, it shuts down the pipeline. So a lot of dual sourcing is taking place. We've also started subscribing to databases where we know the country of origin for virtually everything that we buy. And because of that, if there's a conflict in a particular region or there's a natural disaster, we can identify where we're at risk. And we might do something like either go to another alternate, we might change the distribution, it might be 50-50, we'd go 70-30. We might do stocking programs, increase it if it's in place, put it in place if it's not. So all of this we never did this pre-pandemic.
The other thing I would add to that is end of life. And we do end of life searches for our customers, so they're not designing in things that we're going to have a problem in 6 to 12 months or 18 months. And that matters, particularly in our industries.
All right, I'm going off script again. We're going to keep this going just because we hit a few topics that I think are really important. With that information you shared, that predictability of sourcing products, how does that play into helping you onboard new customers that may be bringing a project that might not be available? Is that a fair question? Do you think I asked that right?
It's a good question. I think, so these conversations tend to take place more so now in the engagement process, even before that first PO is placed. That's what we find. I had a recent visit with a customer. We spent 25% of our time talking about the technology and processes. We spent 75% of our time talking about supply chain, talking about what value do we bring in terms of resiliency, in terms of offering alternatives. I think that is part of the initial sales cycle because everybody is very sensitive to that right now. And I don't think that's going to go away. Obsolescence is a huge problem. And it's not going to go away. This is here for the long term, I think, especially as component companies consolidate and they start taking certain lines and just eliminating them.
And I think implicit to what you're hearing with the type of business we're in with quick turn, it's less of a concern now because we're going through the design phase. But as we transition into a production of the program, they've got to design in and build something that they know is going to have some longevity. So that probably drives why I'm less worried about it and why you're more.
Keeps me up at night.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we do our sign off, if you guys could just look at the camera, give your name, your company again, and maybe where you're located.
My name is Ed Evangelista. My company is Federal Electronics. We're located in Cranston, Rhode Island, and Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico.
And I'm Michael Hinshaw. Our company is Green Circuits, Quick Turn Prototyping. We're located in San Jose, California.
Gentlemen, thank you so much, and thank you for watching another expert panel discussion on what's new in electronics.